morning, guys. Just finishing up a chest workout today. And I was studying in Ezra 6. And I found Ezra 6 to be very inspiring because oftentimes in the Old Testament, God has his will set out, right? He says, go and do this, go and do X, right? And in this scenario, as we were talking about before, he was telling his people to continue to build the temple even though the king of the land told them not to. And then you had resistance, right? And so God's will came with resistance. God's will came also with disobedience to the laws of the land in that period. And so what's inspiring about that is the fact that God's will, a lot of people today think that his will come easily, that his will, be this just smooth paved road that, has no potholes or anything, right? And the Bible describes something very different. And I think that it's really good for people to read these stories and, these factual historical events because it helps us to realize that God's will in our life is not always going to be so smooth. There's going to be obstacles, there's going to be challenges. And it's up to us to face those challenges with God, with grace and with strength and with his power. And it's also so important to understand that God's will have trials and challenges, because if we think that God's will is just going to be this gravy, beautifully paved road, then when trials do come, many will be tempted to think, oh, this must not be God's will. This must just be a closed door. When in actuality, just like it came down to the state resisting God's people, but God's will required them to continue on despite the state. So, and despite the criticism from their enemies, despite the resistance that they got from their enemies and the scoffers nearby. And so that's also so we don't get discouraged, and that when we're on God's will and when things get hard, we know that it's part of the plan and that God saw these challenges coming and he's going to be with us and he's going to give us the victory when those challenges come. Because if you're in the will of God, he's always going to give you victory. You just have to believe, have faith, and do your best. And God's going to do the rest. So God bless, guys. Hope that helps you out through your day today. And today, if you ever come through any trials, just remember, God saw them coming and he's already made a way. God bless.